right. Okay. All right. The date, November 25th, 1926. The time, well, it wasn't Monday Night Football. It was Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving Day football for the New York Football Giants. This would be their second. Obviously, they started in 1925. Their first Thanksgiving Day game ever was against the Staten Island Stapletons, 1925. However, it counted in the overall record history of the Giants, but it did not. That game did not count in the NFL standings, as the Staten Island Stapletons were not part of the NFL that particular year. So this game here, okay, well, shall I say, the date, the time, the teams, the New York Giants at the Brooklyn Lions, the place, Ebbets Field, home of the Brooklyn Dodgers. So as I was mentioning, this Thanksgiving Day game here, Giants at the Brooklyn Dodgers, would be the first ever Thanksgiving Day game for the New York Giants. It actually counted in the standings because the Brooklyn Lions were part of the NFL. It didn't last very long, but they were part of the NFL in the 1926 season, and that was Thanksgiving Day game. We're getting down to the end. Well, it's getting to the nitty gritty of the 1926 season for the New York Football Giants. We only got 3 games left to talk about. 2 games that actually happened, and 1 game that got. Give me just a second here. So we got this game we're talking about, right? The Thanksgiving Day game. Then there's 2 more games that actually got played, right? And then there's another one, which actually wound up being the final game of the season. And it got canceled because of snow. So as what happened back then, obviously with the way the fields were and everything, things would get canceled. There was, interestingly, the first game of the season that was supposed to be scheduled between these 2 teams, the New York Giants and the Brooklyn Lions, was on actually Halloween, October 31st, 1926, at the Polo Grounds. But speaking of fields and all of that and everything, that game got canceled because of rain. Now, as I said, probably quite a few times throughout this little series I got going on here. The fields were much different than they are today. Today, you can have a tsunami, a wall of water, wash over the stadium, the field, and within a half an hour, the field is bone dry because drainage. That's the way it is nowadays. It wasn't like that back then. Fields back then got wet. Guess what? They stayed wet. And a lot of times it was like quagmires. It was just like, the puddles, and it would take whatever, maybe sometimes days for it to totally dry. So, so there was a game that got played, as I said earlier, in this season on Halloween, October 31st. It was supposed to be played between the Brooklyn Lions and the New York Giants at the Polo Grounds. Got canceled because of rain. And then there was another game here, which I'm going to be talking about probably within the upcoming weeks. It was a game that was supposed to be the Chicago Bears at the Polo Grounds against the Giants, and it got canceled because of snow. So, but we're getting down to the nitty gritty down here. So we got the Thanksgiving Day game here. The Giants, this would be a good one. The Giants would wind up prevailing. But interestingly, only stuff like this can happen back in the day. That's what fascinates me so much about the NFL back then. And it ain't never going to happen nowadays. I've seen it, this game, the Brooklyn team being called 3 different names. One would be the Brooklyn Lions, one would be the Brooklyn Horsemen, and the other one would be the Brooklyn Horse Lions. Why were they possibly called 3 different names? Well, because they merged with another team from another league. Now, I'm saying there's something, it'd be kind of like along the lines of like the Giants this upcoming season on Thanksgiving Day, they're scheduled to play against the Philadelphia Eagles, just say. Well, the Ottawa Rough Riders of the CFL, okay, they start playing. They played 4 or 5 games in their regular season, and all of a sudden they go under. They disband, right? Well, then all of a sudden, some of those players, not all, but some of those players from the Ottawa Rough Riders merge with the Philadelphia Eagles halfway or so through the season, and the Philadelphia Eagles become the Philadelphia Rough Eagles or Eagle Roughs or Eagle Riders or whatever. And so then the Giants are not only playing the Philadelphia Eagles, but they're playing some of the players from the Ottawa Rough Riders. I mean, that would never happen, but it happened this year. There was a league. It was formed. I think there was. I'm not mistaken. I think there was 4 AFL leagues that were formed at one time or the other. Obviously, the one that we know most of is from 1960 to 69. You know, the one that we know most of. But the first AFL league that ever got formed was in 1926. It only lasted 1 season. It started 9 teams, and I believe 4 of them, I'm going to read from Wikipedia here, I believe only 4 of them were in existence at the end of the season. Okay. One of the teams that was started the season in the AFL was the Brooklyn Horsemen. They only played so many games. They did not finish the season. They disbanded because of attendance. You had to have attendance to pull the money in. Remember, there's no ESPN, right? There's no TV rights. There's no this. There's no that, right? It was only people paying cash, okay, at the ticket office to get in there to actually, obviously make money for the teams, And if you didn't get people coming in, you were screwed. You were really, really screwed. The one thing that made it really good for the Giants back then, okay, is with Tim Mara. Okay, one thing that really, and this particular season here, 1926, from what I've seen, the New York Giants at the end of the season, I'm gonna go over, because he was competing with another league. Okay, I'm gonna go over all of this. Have yourself a seat. Grab yourself maybe a cup of coffee or something. It's 3:30 where I'm at in the morning right now. We got a lot to talk about, okay? But Tim Mara and the Giants this particular season, 1926, because he was competing with another league, lost $40,000, okay? But he was kind of hoping that better times were ahead going forward because this one league only lasted the 1 season, all right? But with Tim Mara being a bookkeeper, because it was legal back then, right? He was making money from his bookkeeping business. He would keep taking money from his bookkeeping business and keep dumping it into the Giants. And so basically he was able to stay afloat. I mean, not every team back then was able to do that. A lot of teams back then, they went $40,000 in the hole. Guess what? All right, well, it's been real. It's been nice, but we're out of here. Okay? I mean, $40,000 back in 1926. I should have checked out to see exactly what it is in today's money, but hold on. Let me see. Let's see. What is $40,000 in 1926 worth today? Let's see. 40,000 in 19. Oh, okay. $40,000 in 1926 and 2024 is be worth over $700,000 today. Now, to be fair, okay, I mean, like if Jerry Jones, okay, were to lose $700,000 today, I mean, that's like maybe about 3 cents to me. You know what I'm saying? So people, nowadays, owners nowadays and all can afford to lose $700,000. If your team's worth $9 billion, you can afford to lose that. That's a tax write-off. That's all it is, right? He just sells some more uniforms, sell some more Micah Parsons uniforms or ABCD Lamb uniforms, whatever. We'll break even, right? But back then, you lose $40,000, you lose $700,000 basically back, back in 1926. That's a lot of money. People just can't. Oh, I'll just sell some more, Jack McBride jerseys, or that's not happening. So you lose a lot of money back then. A lot of teams just go under, and that's exactly what happened. So, 1925, after the Red Grange finished his career at Illinois. Basically, the last game he played was, I believe, it was toward the end of. It might have been the Thanksgiving Day game. It was toward the end of November 1925. Well, after the season, his college season was over. Okay, he turned pro, and he started playing for the Chicago Bears. And him, Ray Grange, and his manager, C.C. Pyle, some people called him Cash and Carry Pyle. George Hallows called him Cold Cash Pyle. So that was Ray Grange's manager. They made a lot of money. They made a lot of money off of Ray Grange. Okay, and basically after the 1925 season was over, C.C. Pyle went into remember Tim Mara and the Giants with the Polo Grounds. So C.C. Pyle, he knew that Red Grange could draw some people. He was a big draw. So what did he do? He went to like one of the biggest stadiums, or whatever, if not the biggest stadium or so, capacity-wise, and he leased out Yankee Stadium for 5 seasons. So at the owners' meeting in February 1926, he went in and he said he wanted a franchise in New York. He said he leased out Yankee Stadium for 5 seasons. I want a team in New York. And with the territorial rights, right, Tim Mara said, no, that would be basically suicide if I allow another team. Basically, they're right across the river. They're hundreds of feet apart. If you ever look at a picture, there's a river, right? And then there's the Polo Grounds, and then there's Yankee Stadium. And, you'd have to be a pretty good arm, but you can almost, if you wanted to take a baseball, you can almost throw from one stadium to the other. You could probably almost drive a golf ball. Maybe Tiger Woods could drive a golf ball from one stadium to the other. It was that close. That was like that would just be suicide. So Tim Mara said no. I had a hard enough time last in 1925 making money. As I said, if I allow a team in the Yankee Stadium, that's suicide. I can't allow that. Well, C.C. Pyle didn't want to have none of that. So it's like, okay, well, either you allow me in the NFL, all right, because I got Yankee Stadium for 5 seasons, or if you don't want to do that, I'll just make my own league. Well, that's what he did. He created his own league. He created his, I'm going to go over this here with Wikipedia and everything. He created his own league. He had the 9 teams in there. But I said it didn't turn out. But he had the money to fund. He paid, the commissioner, right? He was able to, he got the Giants, Bob Folwell, who was a very, very good coach. The Giants coach, Bob Folwell, for the 1925 season. Well, he was able to get him. He became the head coach of the Philadelphia Quakers in 1926 of the AFL, right? And Bob Folwell was so good. How good was he? Bob Folwell was so good. The Philadelphia Quakers of 1926 won the AFL, right? Bob Folwell, he had some very good seasons in the college ranks. But in 1925 with the Giants started off 0-3. Bob Folwell got rid of Nash. He got rid of Thorpe because he was injured and all that. He brought in some younger guys and everything like that. And the Giants won 8 of their final 9 games. So Bob Folwell is a very, very good coach. But Bob Folwell, went to the new league because it was just money. A lot of it was money. And interestingly enough, on the Giants 1925 roster, they had 29 players. Okay. Talk about turnover. In 1926, only 12 of those 29 players were still there. So they lost 17 players. Well, out of those 17 players that they lost, 5 of them wound up going to Brooklyn of the Brooklyn Lions. So the Giants actually going to be facing some of their, this game here, 1926. There'll be some players on this Brooklyn team that played for the Giants in 1925, right? But I said, read this over here. The from Wikipedia, I got 3 trillion tabs opened up here. All right, the American Football League season of 1926. Okay, let me read these teams. There were 9 teams. Okay. What he tried to do, he tried to set up teams to compete with other the Giants had a team, obviously, in New York. Well, in the AFL, they put in the New York Yankees, right, in big cities. In the AFL, they had the Brooklyn Horsemen. AFL. When the NFL, we had the Brooklyn Lions. In Philadelphia, they had the Philadelphia Quakers. All right. In the NFL, they had the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. In Chicago, in the NFL, right, there was the Chicago Bears, there was Chicago Cardinals, right? In the AFL, there was the Chicago. Now, I don't think Michael Jordan was a part of the team, but they were the Chicago Bulls. So there was a lot of teams in the and also those 2 traveling teams. Actually, the NFL had a couple traveling teams. One with the Kansas City Cowboys was another one. But, however, there were 2 traveling teams from Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Wildcats were from the AFL, traveling team. The Los Angeles Buccaneers, who beat the Giants, by the way, 6-0, a couple weeks prior to this game, was a traveling team from the NFL. So there was a lot of competing cities, and basically they just kind of almost wiped each other out. It was tough. This guy Cash and Carry Pyle he was just all out for himself. That's all he was out for. He wasn't out for the better of football, right? It was all for him. Now what he could have done was he could have took Red Grange, quite possibly, gone to another team, another city, right? Maybe the population wasn't as great, or maybe the stadium wasn't as great, but he probably could have got himself an NFL team with Red Grange, who probably would have been a pretty good draw, and he might have thrived and survived. But he got greedy. He tried to compete with the big boys of the NFL, and he lost. And he lost a lot of money. So the 1926 AFL season is the only season of the first American Football League. There was a 1960 to 69 season. Then there was another one in the early 30s, and then there was another one which was, I think, in the late 30s, which went 1938 and 39, I believe it was. So there was I think there was 4, and then it's not to be confused with the All American Football Conference. Said there's been about 3,000 NFL, 3,000 leagues, football leagues. There's not a lot, but I think there's 4 AFL leagues. So it started with 9 teams, with the initial game of the season being played in front of 22,000 fans in Cleveland, Ohio. But by the end of the season, December 14th, 1926, only 4 teams were still in existence. 3 teams owned or subsidized by the league by the league founder, Cash and Carry Pyle, and Red Grange. There were the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Wildcats, and the Chicago Bulls. That's one of the reasons why those 3 teams were still in existence at the end of the season, because Cash and Carry Pyle with Red Grange, right? They were forking over some of their money to keep those teams in existence. And the league champion, the Philadelphia Quakers, who was coached by Bob Folwell, who was the Giants. This is 1926, but Bob Folwell coached the Giants in 1925. The initial lineup of teams included the traveling Wildcats of Los Angeles and a charter member of the National Football League, the Rock Island Independents. The Rock Island Independents were part of the NFL. Well, they jumped to this AFL for 1 season. which became a second traveling team after having poor attendance in its first 3 games. Most AFL games were defensive affairs, with only the New York and Cleveland Panthers averaging more than 10 points of offense per contest. The majority of scoring was by either placement or drop kick. Chicago's Joe Sterneman scored 52 of his team's total 88 points, 60% of Chicago's points, but that was not the largest share of team points in the AFL in 1926. Newark's Doug Wyckoff had his team's entire point total for the year when he scored a touchdown and kicked the extra point in the Bears' first game. You look here, the Newark Bears were a team, right? They played 5 games. They scored 7 points in 5 games. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. The Brooklyn Horsemen, they played 4 games. They disbanded because their season was going so bad after 4 games. They were 1-3. They scored 25 points and gave up 68 points. But after 4 games, the Brooklyn Horsemen disbanded and they merged with the Brooklyn Lions. And that's why toward the end of the season, being the 1926 season, I said I've seen them being called the Brooklyn Horse Lions, the Brooklyn Lions, or the Brooklyn Horsemen, because the 2 teams wound up merging. Let's see here. While Philadelphia and New York were consistently playing in front of large crowds of at least 20,000 per game, the rest of the league was not so fortunate. While crowds of more than 10,000 attended games in Fenway Park and Comiskey Park in September and October, crowds in other AFL cities were consistently much smaller. Rock Island from Moline, Illinois, struggled to draw 5,000 into its home stadium. Newark did not have a total of 5,000 in its 3 home games combined. Competing against the Brooklyn Lions of the National Football League. The Brooklyn Horsemen called it quits in November and merged with their NFL brethren. So they merged with the Brooklyn Lions. As the AFL decreased in size in October and November, so did the attendance figures in Philadelphia. The only team in the AFL reported to have made a profit were the Philadelphia Quakers. And as I said, with a record of 8-2, they wound up winning the whole kit and caboodle. 2 weeks after clinching the AFL championship in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Quakers played an exhibition game, which is one of the games I'm going to talk about in my upcoming series here. And in the upcoming weeks, they played an exhibition game with the NFL sixth-place team, the New York Giants, in a driving snowstorm at Polo Grounds. Only 5,000 hardy fans witnessed the Giants thrashing the Philadelphia Quakers 31-0. While the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Wildcats went on a barnstorming tour of the American Football League after the season was over with. Matter of fact, the Bears, their season ended pretty much like it was in December. Not the Bears, I'm sorry, the New York Yankees with Red Grange. They're from the AFL. They went on a barnstorming tour after that. They're basically their season ended in December. Well, they went on a barnstorming tour of the South. And by the time their season was over, it was in February. So they played a lot of games here. All right, so we got the origin. This is something I went over here. The controversial ending of the National Football League's 1925 season led to the founding of the first AFL by Red Grange's agent C.C. Pyle. In an era in which no professional football team had a prearranged schedule, each team was responsible for booking its own games with virtually no limitations as to the number of games. The Pottsville Maroons were hailed as the NFL champions by several newspapers after Pottsville defeated the Chicago Cardinals on December 6th, even though there was still 2 weeks left in the season. There's a big controversy here. The Pottsville Maroons, they played a game which they shouldn't have against a Notre Dame All-Star teams in Philadelphia, and the game basically competed with the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets' territorial rights. So basically, Joe Carr, he kicked the Pottsville Maroons out of the league. Although the Pottsville Maroons at the time had the best record in the NFL. Basically, the Pottsville Maroons, a lot of people say, are the 1925 champions. But Joe Carr kicked them out of the league for just the one season, and he awarded the championship to the Chicago Cardinals. Let's see here. Oops, sorry. In December, C.C. Pyle, or Cash and Carry Pyle, surprised the league by requesting a franchise in New York City for himself, and would star back Red Grange, and he secured a 5-year lease on Yankee Stadium in direct competition to Tim Mara's year-old New York Giants. When Carr announced a ruling in favor of Mara's objection to Pyle's application for the NFL membership, Pyle announced the formation of the first American Football League, featuring Grange and the New York Yankees. Remember, the New York Football Giants were in the Polo Grounds where the New York Baseball Giants played. Cash and Carry's Pyle, right? They played in Yankee Stadium. They became the New York Football Yankees, and they played in Yankee Stadium where the New York Baseball Yankees played. Sometimes not a lot of imagination back then, right? I mean, back then, let's see here. The Brooklyn Dodgers were a baseball team and a football team. The New York Yankees were a baseball team and a football team. The New York Giants were a baseball team and a football team. Cincinnati Reds were a baseball team and a football team. The Pittsburgh Pirates were a baseball team and a football team. The Cleveland Indians, I believe, were a baseball team. So there were a lot of teams back then that were baseball and sometimes it can be a little confusing. The NFL charter member Rock Island Independence left the then 7-year-old NFL to join the new AFL. And the upstart league matched the NFL in having a road team representing Los Angeles. Remember, the NFL had the Los Angeles Buccaneers, who actually weren't too bad of a team. As I said, they came into Polo Grounds to beat the Giants 6-0. But then the AFL had the Los Angeles Wildcats. The new league chose former Princeton athlete, former New York City deputy of street cleaning, and former Newark, New Jersey chief of waste disposal, Bill Edwards, as the league president, and prepared to compete against the older league. To compete against the NFL. The AFL was to compete against the NFL for its talent and spectators. The AFL and NFL went to head-to-head competition in New York, where the Yankees and the Giants played, across the East River in Brooklyn. Across the East River in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Horsemen and the Brooklyn Lions went head-to-head. In Chicago, the Chicago Bulls went to head-to-head against the Bears and the Cardinals. And in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Quakers and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets went head-to-head. Let's not forget about the Pottsville Maroons, too. They weren't in Philadelphia. They were just outside of Philadelphia, but they were relatively close. The AFL's Cleveland Panthers, previously independent, were also preparing to go face-to-face with their hometown counterpart, the Cleveland Bulldogs, who were the champions of the NFL in 1924. When the Bulldogs owner Sam Deutsch decided to suspend the operations for 1926. So actually there was supposed to be two teams in Cleveland going head-to-head, but that never wound up happening. Let's see here. All right. So the teams in this AFL were the Philadelphia Quakers, the New York Yankees, the Cleveland Panthers, the Los Angeles Wildcats, the Chicago Bulls, the Boston Bulldogs, Rock Island Independence, Brooklyn Horsemen, and the Newark Bears. Now, in Boston, that was a tough sell. That's why there've been so many different names. The Washington Commanders, right? Well, back in the day, they were the Boston Braves. And then they became the Boston Redskins. Well, Preston Marshall, the owner of the Redskins / Braves / Commanders, whatever you want to call them back then, he had a hard time getting a lot of people in Boston. Actually, they played in Fenway Park. And after the 1936 season, the Boston Redskins moved to Washington, when they became obviously the Washington Redskins. But he moved from Boston to Washington, D.C. because he couldn't sell tickets. It was a very, very, very tough draw. Matter of fact, in 1936, the 1936 NFL championship game was supposed to be played between the Green Bay Packers and the Boston Redskins in Fenway Park. However, George Preston Marshall said, I don't want home field advantage because there's no draw. Basically, it was so much more about back then, it was more about making money at the gate than it was maybe about winning a championship. So instead of having, and even if he had the home field advantage right in Boston, there probably would have only been, wouldn't have been that few thousand people there, maybe 5,000 or so, not that much. So what he did, was he said, I want to give up home field advantage, and the 1936 NFL championship game was actually played at the Polo Grounds. Why? Well, because it was a bigger stadium. It was a bigger draw. It was in New York City. More fans came out and watched the game, and the Green Bay Packers would wind up winning the game. But the Redskins would get the better in 1937. The Washington Redskins, actually, they won their first championship in 1937. But in 1936, the Boston Redskins gave up the home field advantage in the championship game, moved it to New York, where they got a bigger crowd, a bigger draw, and then they wound up losing the championship, though. But so we got the Brooklyn Horsemen and the Newark, New Jersey Bears, right? So they were the Newark Bears. They were playing up by where the Giants play right now. But they only played 5 games, and they scored 7. They scored 1 touchdown in 5 games. I mean, you can't have people come and watch you when every 5 games you're scoring 1 touchdown. I mean, you think the Giants' offense of this past season was bad. I mean, that's some tough football right there. And we got the demise of the first AFL. While the new 9-team AFL was competing against the NFL, that had expanded to 22 teams for the 26 season. Remember, in 1925, there was 20 teams. The Giants started in 1925, I believe, if I remember correct. From 1925, I think, to 1934, 1935, there was a different number of teams every season. 1925, there was 20 teams. 1926, it jumped up to 22 teams. 1927, the Giants won the first championship. It went down to 12 teams. It was just every year. I think 35 and 36 was the first seasons that was back-to-back, same number of teams. I think it was 9 teams. But from the Giants, when they first started in 1925, it took them like 9, 10 seasons, maybe 11 seasons before there was the same amount of teams from back-to-back years. It was just, the teams are coming and going left and right. It was crazy. The war for talent and audience had a disastrous effect on all but the strongest teams. Of the 31 teams, right, 9 in the AFL, 22 in the NFL. So of the 31 teams that were in existence across both leagues in 1926, only 12 survived to play in 1927. Freaking crazy, huh? And 8 folded, while heavily financial losses left the NFL with no option but to eliminate 11 of their 22 teams. That's why they had, as I said, they had 22 teams in 1926. 1927, they dropped down to 12 teams. While the Yankees and the Quakers consistently drew large crowds, the rest of the AFL did not. And one by one, AFL franchises went out of business, even with the financial assistance of C.C. Pyle. The first sign of trouble occurred in mid-October when the Rock Island played its last home game of 3 consecutive home games and started wandering like the Wildcats. The following week, Brooklyn played its 3rd and last home game in the AFL in front of mainly empty seats. On October 24th, 1926, the Newark Bears changed its nickname to the Demons, played a scoreless tie with Rock Island, and disbanded hours after the end of the game. It was just crazy back then. The following week saw the Cleveland franchise collapse. November 1926 was not much brighter for the House of Cards. That was the American Football League. The Brooklyn Horsemen played the last 3 games of its existence, all shutout losses. I mean, yeah, if you stink and you can't score and there's no excitement, I mean, even if they lost, like say the Brooklyn Horsemen, I mean, it was never going to happen back then. I'm just saying, if they lost every game 40-30, that's some excitement. But when you go there and you're going to pay some money to see a team not score any points, right? Let's see here. And left the league after the Brooklyn Horsemen and left the league. They left the league and they merged with the NFL counterparts, the Brooklyn Lions, right? By the middle of the month, the Boston Bulldogs folded, as did Rock Island a week later. By Thanksgiving of 1926, there were only 4 teams operating in the AFL. The New York Yankees, the Chicago Bulls, the Los Angeles Wildcats, and the Philadelphia Quakers. Only 4 teams out of the 9. So it started back like maybe, I guess, in September. 2 months later, 5 out of the 9 teams folded, with only the Quakers making a profit for the year, boosted in part by huge attendances stemming from the United States. The United States celebration. It was the 150th anniversary, right? 1776, 1926, 150. So I guess that drew a lot of people there. I guess 150 year anniversary of the United States. I didn't think of that. And the very large stadium capable of hosting them. While Pyle was spending his own money to keep the other three teams afloat. Now, Mara was doing the same thing with the New York Giants, but he was just doing it for 1 team. Cash and Carry Pyle was doing it with 3 teams. While the Yankees went on a barnstorming tour and the Quakers attempted to arrange for a challenge game between the champions of the 2 leagues, the Wildcats officially became inactive. In reality, they were touring with the Yankees as the designated opponent on the barnstorming tour. After the top 6 NFL teams had all declined the Quakers' challenge due to scheduling and other issues, the NFL 7th place finishers, the New York Giants, accepted, with both parties opting for a game at the Polo Grounds on December 12, 1926. The Quakers' hopes for both football credibility and a financial windfall evaporated as the game was played on a blustery day, snow, and only 5,000 fans showed up. So the Quakers not only financially lost, maybe they broke even, but they were kind of hoping that the Polo Grounds get a big, right? It's the first championship, the AFL, NFL kind of championship, first one, right? Well, the Giants kicked their butts 31-0. So. The same day, the Chicago Bulls and New York Yankees met for the last American Football League game at Comiskey Park. The Yankees won 7-3, and the league ceased to exist after that. So it was very, 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 very interesting. That was the first AFL league. Right? It only lasted, 1 season. The 1926, they said 9 teams started the season. Basically, by the end of the season, only 4 teams were left. And the only reason why they were still around was because Cash and Carry Pyle, CC Pyle, was forking out money to keep the teams afloat. Only 1 team out of those 9 from the AFL actually made money, the Philadelphia Quakers. And if it wasn't for Cash and Carry Pyle, keep dishing out money to keep the teams afloat in the AFL, at the end of the season, it might have been just the 1 team, the Philadelphia Quakers. They were the only team that made money. So that's what happened when, so Cash and Carry Pyle made a lot of money in 1925 as the manager of Red Grange. He took I think 40% of his money, his earnings, I think it was. I mean, they both made a lot of money. He did all kinds of, I don't know how to say commercials, but, he put his name behind a lot of different, like clothing and stuff like that and everything. He did like different ads and all that, and he got paid money. He did movies. He got paid a lot of money, a lot of the money at the box office for football games. He made a lot of money. And cash and carry, C.C. Powell made a lot of money in 1925, and basically he almost kind of like blew it all in the 1926 season trying to keep the AFL afloat. And I said, if C.C. Powell, would have just gone into the owners meeting or whatever, in 1926, I'd like a team. I got money. I got a star. I have the star. Rick Grange was the star. He was Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, and Jesus Christ all rolled up into one. He was freaking huge. I got the star, Red Grange. We got our own. We can get a team. I got money. We're not going to go under. Where can we play? Right? If he did something like that, and things probably would have been good, but he got greedy and it wound up costing him. So anyway, as I said, so the Brooklyn Horsemen, right? They only wound up playing. As I said, was it 4 games? Yeah, and then they disbanded. So after they disbanded, they merged with the Brooklyn Lions here of the NFL. So going into this game here, the Brooklyn, where are we at here? Let's see, the Brooklyn Lions. The week before this, they lost to the Los Angeles Buccaneers 20-0. So the coming into this Thanksgiving Day game, the Brooklyn Lions were 3-6. Brooklyn Lions played 2 more games in the 1926 season. Both were like it was home and home against the Giants. But what they did was they on Thanksgiving, this happened back then. This day here, November 25th, Thursday, November 25th, the New York Giants went to Ebbets Field to play the Brooklyn Lions. 3 days later, Sunday, November 28th, the Brooklyn Lions went to the Polo Grounds to play the New York Giants. It was like a home and home. They played, Thursday, and then 3 days later on Sunday they played. So they basically, in 4 days, they played 2 games against each other, right? So the Brooklyn Lions were 3-6, and they lost these final 2 games against the New York Giants. They lost this game here, which we're going to go over. They lost 17-0, and then the game in the Polo Grounds, they lost 27-0, right? Then their season was over. With the New York Giants, had a better record. Coming into this game, the Giants had just defeated the Providence Steamroller. So the Giants coming into this game here against the Brooklyn Lions were 6-4-1. Right? The Giants would win once again, they would win their final 2 games of this season, and they would finish 8-4-1. Almost identical record what they had in 1925. 1925, they were 8-4. This year, they were 8-4-1. Their one tie here was against the Canton Bulldogs, 7-7. But other than that, it was almost identical record. And a lot of it was kind of like the same. Last season, 1925, the Giants started off 0-3. They would win 8 of their final 9 games to finish 8-4. This season here, they started off 2-0, but then they lost 3 games. So after 5 games, they had 3 losses. Last year, in 1925, after the first 3 games, they had 3 losses. So they started off bad in both seasons, but they finished strong. Right? As I said, they won 8 of their final 9 games in the 1925 season. Here in the 1926 season, what do we got? 1, 2, 3. In their final 8 games of the 26 season, the Giants were 6-1-1. And also, that does not include also the game, which they were supposed to play against the George Halas and the Chicago Bears, but got canceled because due to snow. It was I think there was like 3 inches of snow, I believe it was. I'm gonna have a video I'm gonna do on it, but basically the 2 teams they both got there. They were there at the Polo Grounds and all. It wasn't like they called George Halas on the phone. Yeah, we got some. No, they were both there. Both teams were there. And they just, with the field covered with snow and everything, they agreed just basically to cancel the game. So the Giants would wind up winning this game 17-0, which I'm going to go over. But I said, but interestingly, right? I said, I got this. Do I have there? Oh, got to pull the roster up. Oh, wait. There we go. All right, I got the roster. As I said, the Lions had quite a few players on their roster throughout the season here. Obviously, one of them had to do because they merged with the Brooklyn Horsemen, right? So they had, let me count. I should have counted beforehand, so please forgive me. But let me count. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 8, 9, 30. They had 33 players on their roster. So that's a nice size roster. Nice size roster, especially because what I said, they only played, they played 11 games. I said, 33 players on the roster was, that's a nice size roster. But interestingly, out of the Brooklyn Lions here for the 1926, 5 of them were on the Giants from the year before, right? They, let's see, we got Matt Brennan, right? He was on the Giants in the 1926 season. That's why I'm just going to go down here in alphabetical order. Paul Jaffe, he was on the Giants for the 1925 season. 1926 season, he was on the Brooklyn Lions. Harry the Swede Nordstrom. Still, for the life of me, still can't get a picture of this guy. Can't find a picture of Harry Swede Nordstrom. For the life of me, can't do that. Mystery man, right? He was on the Giants, right? And then the two R's. The 2 R's that the Giants had in 1925, they're on the Brooklyn Lions in 1926. Reynolds and Rooney, right? Where we at here? Owen Reynolds and Bill Rooney. They were on the Giants in 1925. Well, they're on the Brooklyn Lions. The New York Giants. They were on the Giants in 25. They're on the Brooklyn Lions in 1926. So the Giants were playing some of their old teammates. As I said, there was a lot of turnover back then. I said there was 29 players on the Giants in 1925. There was only 12 of them that remained for the 1926 season. So, all right. So let's see. Let's get a little crack-a-lack in here. I've been talking for only 46 minutes. That's all. All right. So we got where we at? Here we go. This article here, the Horsemen ride against the Giants at Ebbets Field. The Horsemen, basically, is like the Horsemen and the Lions, the Horsemen. They all merged. So as I said, I've seen them called the Brooklyn Lions, the Brooklyn Horsemen. But in this article, 2 professional football battles are slated to be staged on the local gridirons this afternoon, meaning the November 25th. An Interborough National League tilt at Ebbets Field will bring together the New York Giants and the newly organized Brooklyn Lion Horsemen. While Red Grange and the Yankees will entertain the Philadelphia Quakers at Yankee Stadium. The Interborough battle promises to be a bitter one. The Giants will match Hinkie Haynes and Jack McBride against Earl Britton and Harry Stuhldreher, who was one of the 4 horsemen for Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And when those stars clash, something should fly. The Giants are in great condition for the game and are confident of annexing another victory. If Herman Bagby and Rex Thomas recover from their injuries in time to start today, the Brook Lions are a sure bet to make plenty of trouble for the New Yorkers, however. A chance to clinch the American League Football Championship will be awaiting Grange and his Gritters when they clash with Bob Folwell, who coached the Giants in 1925, who clashed with Bob Folwell's Quakers. Grange's 11 had been playing real football, running up 6 straight victories before losing to the Wildcats. Such stars as Al Croix, famous Penn fullback, Bob Dinsmore, Century Milstead, and Tully Will found in the Quakers lineup. Now, Century Milstead, all right, who were in the Quakers lineup, Century Milstead played for the Giants in 1925. Bob Folwell, who's the coach of the Quakers, coached for the Giants in 1925. Oh, it's such a small world, isn't it? Then we have Pease, Tryon, and Fry will support Red in the Yankee backfield. A schoolboy game will be played as a preliminary to the pro battle. So there'll be a game played before. It might probably like a high school game will get played before the AFL Yankee game. So that happened before. That happened quite a couple times with the Giants at the Polo Grounds. There would be a preliminary, basically to help bring out a crowd, because back then high school, especially but college, was freaking huge. That would help draw in, a nice crowd. So anything they can do to draw in a crowd. All right. So we got everything all set up here. All right. So we got all right. So we got here. New York Giants batter Brook Lions. So they're the Brook Lions. The Brooklyn Lions, the Brooklyn Horsemen, the Brooklyn Horse Lions, the Brook Lions. I mean, pick a name, whatever makes you happy. Call them that. They outplayed the Horsemen 11 in 3 periods before 10,000 people at Ebbets Field. Haggerty, star of the battle, makes touchdown after 68-yard run, and with McBride leads in the attack. New York Giants traveled across the bridge yesterday afternoon and played their first interborough game with the newly combined Brook Lion Horsemen, handing the Horsemen a 17-0 defeat. A crowd of 10,000, the largest of the season, witnessed the contest at Ebbets Field, which was featured by the Giants' strong running attack and the powerful line play and the Horsemen's overhead game. The contest was a rough one, and both Haynes and Bomar were carried off the field. Haynes in the second play of the game, and the former Vanderbilt star during the second period. Hinkie Haynes got injured quite a bit. He broke his nose against the Columbus Tigers in 1925, and the next time he played, he had a helmet on with like a big. There's a picture of it. You can find it online with a big nose guard attached to it. The helmet had looked like something from medieval times, with big leather helmet or whatever like that. But he had a big face guard with something over the nose, and all you can see is his eyes. It was kind of freaky looking. Let's see. The Horsemen's forward wall playing together for the second time gave evidence that it was not yet coordinated. The Giants were probably the strongest line in the National League, pushed the Brook Lion combination around at will, and most of New York gains were made on rushes through the line. Haggerty and McBride consistently plowed through the Brook Lion forward wall for repeated gains and together clicked off many first downs. As usual, Al Nesser played an aggressive game, as did Earl Pottinger. Earl Pottinger, after this season, will become the Giants head coach from 1927 to 1928. Go figure, right? Small world. Earl Pottinger, who was excellent on defensive play, continued breaking through to throw the Brook Lion backs for losses. The Horsemen flashed a strong overhead attack, and in the final quarter outplayed the Giants, bringing the ball from their own 13-yard line to the New York Giants' 15-yard mark, only to lose the ball as the whistle blew. So they were down 17-0. What do we got? 15. They went 72 yards. They went from their own 13-yard line all the way down to the Giants' 15, and game over. So, poor pass stops the drive. The first period was a punting duel with the Giants getting the better of it, but Brook Lion opened up in the second, and with Leith and Rex Thomas carrying the ball, advanced to the 10-yard stripe, not the 10-yard line or the 10-yard mark, the 10-yard stripe. But a poor pass from center spoiled its chance, for Al Nesser rushed in to recover for New York. So there was, I guess, a bad snap, I guess a fumble, and Al Nesser of the Giants recovered. So quite possibly, you look at it was a 17-0 whitewash. Well, I mean, maybe if this snap was a little bit different, maybe they kick a field goal, maybe they score a touchdown. They get down to the Giants' 15-yard line. If they had another minute or two, maybe they score a touchdown at the end of the game. So the game could have been maybe a little bit different. The Giants smashing at the Horsemen's line with Hill and Haggerty carrying the pigskin advanced to their own 35-yard line. On the next play, Koppish skirted left end for 20 yards, and Haggerty duplicated his feet around the other wing, placing the ball on the Brook Lion 25-yard line. So the Giants got a little march going on here. McBride then decided to play safe and went back to the 25-yard line with a Koppish holding the ball, sent it spinning between the goalposts for a field goal. So the Giants went up 3-0. The Horsemen kicked off at the beginning of the second half and booted over the goal line, giving the Giants the ball on their own 20-yard line. McBride and Haggerty in 2 rushes through the line advanced 12 yards. On the next play, Haggerty, hitting the line with tremendous power, ripped his way between left guard and tackle and, aided by splendid interference, dashed 68 yards for the first touchdown of the game. Put the Giants up 10-0. So well had the Giants cleared the path that no Brookline player was within 20 yards of Haggerty as he tore down the field, within 20 yards of him. Whew. McBride added the extra point with a placement kick. Now it was 10-0. The Giants kicked off to Reynolds, who brought the ball to the 32-yard line, but Brookline could not gain. The Giants shot a pass, which Tom Myers intercepted. The Horsemen then fumbled it, and Doc Alexander came through like a flash, scooped up the ball, and galloped 52 yards for the score. McBride added the 17th point. So basically the Giants scored the final 7 points. Doc Alexander, who was the coach of the Giants for the 1926 season here, scooped up a fumble and ran 52 yards back for a touchdown. And that the 2 touchdowns happened in the third quarter. So there was no scoring in the first quarter. The Giants kicked the field goal in the second quarter to go up 3-0 at halftime. Giants scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. There was no scoring in the fourth quarter. Final score was 17-0. Now, the Giants, their starting lineup. Weber was left end. Parnell was left tackle. Williams was left guard. Biggs was the center. Nesser was the right guard. Steve Owen, the future Giants coach from 1931 to 1953, he was their starting right tackle. Bomar was the right end. Haynes was the quarterback. Koppish was the left halfback. Haggerty was the right halfback. And Hill was the fullback. For the Horsemen, Reynolds, this is, let's see here. Yeah, 1, 2. Three of the starting horsemen, horsemen, whatever you want to call them, were former Giants from the year before. Reynolds was the left end. He was one of the former Giants. Paul Jaffe, he was they got him as here's the left tackle, starting left tackle. He was a former Giant from 1925. Yeager was the left guard for the Horsemen, Horse Lions, Brooklyn Lions, Brook Lions, whatever you want to call them. Pick a name. McGrath was their starting center. Howard was their right guard. Blaylock was their right tackle. Drews was their right end. Brennan, player who played for the Giants in 1925, he was their starting quarterback. Thomas was their left halfback. Leith was their right halfback. And Snell was their fullback. Then they have substitutions here. Briggs went in for Haynes for the Giants. Doc Alexander went in for Williams. Murtaugh for Griggs. McBride went in for Hill. And Pottinger for Bomar. Biggs for Nesser. Williams went in for Pottinger. And Hill for McBride. Hogan for Griggs. And Bednar for Murtaugh. Whew, man, the Giants had a lot of subs. That's a lot. That's a lot. The Brook Lion Horsemen. Myers went in for Leith, Britton went in for Thomas, Taylor went in for Howard, and Harrison went in for Reynolds. So they only had 4 subs. Meanwhile, the Giants looked like they had about 500 subs. That's a lot of subs for one game. All right, so then I got 2 more here. I'm going to read this one first. Whoever did a very bad job. They took a picture of this. Of the article, but whoever folded it didn't fold it real well, and they cut some of the wording off. So some of this sounds a little odd, but Lions defeated. Let's see. Ebbetsfield Gritters show flashes of power, but Haggerty runs for 70 yards. Remember in the other article it said I think he ran for 68 yards. Here it says 70, but Alexander recovers fumble to score Giant touchdown. Crowd of 12,000. Remember in the other article it said 10,000. Crowd of 12,000 sees games. Thomas bad shoulder handicaps Lion star. Poor pass spoils Brooklyn score. So the poor pass, actually, I don't know if it was a poor pass, maybe a poor snap from center. Remember they drove down early in the game. They got down to like the 10-yard line or so, whatever, and they fumbled, and the Giants recovered. So the Brook Lion Horsemen yesterday were a much improved lot over their first appearance in the National League. But some 12,000 fans who landed their way into Ebbets Field were compelled to watch their favorites go down before the New York Giants by a score of 17-0. A field something by Jack McBride in the second quarter and two sensational touchdowns in the third session, giving Tim Mara's boys the palm. Not the win, the palm. It was something game of a series between these rival National Leaguers. The second something played Sunday at the Polo Grounds. Oh, the second, have a second game played 3 days later at the Polo Grounds between these two teams. They said some of this got cut off, so it's tough to read some of it. Several things helped to contribute to the defeat of the Fugacy outlet. First, to be fair about it, was the splendid running of Walter Koppisch, Jack Haggerty, and Jack McBride, the Giant backfield. These boys just couldn't be stopped, and although the Brooklyn team played much steadier ball than they did on Sunday, the forward wall was something wholly capable of repelling the advances of these battering Rams and sweepers. There's no something, however, that had Rex Thomas been in the best of shape, something had Herman Bagby been in the game, the Lions would have put up a far stronger game. Let's see, we got here. Thomas not at best. Thomas, who injured his arm in an automobile accident some time ago, was not in Sunday's game, and while he played yesterday, his shoulder was in such bad shape that he could not raise his arm very, very high, with the result that he muffed passes that ordinarily would have been pie for the former St. John's star. Just to make it worse, it happened something almost invariably that when something missed a pass, the field was something before him. Harry Stuhldrager, something quarterback, was unable to participate, for as coach of the Villanova College 11, he was busy watching his Chargers swamp Muhlenberg in the annual game. The Lions showed real football in the first and second quarters and about 5 minutes worth in the final period. In the first session, the only first down of the period when Thomas caught one of somebody's heaves, but were unable to produce the necessary punch. In the second quarter, the homeboys staged a fine march down the field, but McGrath, a tackle who was something converted into a center, snapped the ball back wildly, and Giants recovered. The Giants then got going. Koppisch started with a pretty 18-yard keep around, and Haggerty took a something-yard McBride pass and ran 15 yards more. McBride hit the line of about 8 yards, and then, failing to gain, kicked the neat field goal from the 20-yard line. Haggerty demonstrated how he something to do it for dear old Georgetown soon after the start of the second half. The Giant backfield star ran off tackle and, emerging unscathed, continued right on over the line for a run of some 70 yards. In the other article, it said 68 yards. A few minutes later, Thomas' bad bad arm got in its demon's work, and the ball bounding from his grasp, and Doc Alexander, the Giants playing coach, scooped it up and ran 40 yards for another score. The Lions showed they could fight in the final quarter, nearly over. Britton, the Brooklyn fullback, who had been kept on the bench all through the fray, was injected into the game, and he immediately started passing attack that had the Giants either foggy or groggy, I'm not sure. The ball was brought up within the shadow of the New York goalpost in jig time, but Earl went to the well once too often, for his pass was intended for a touchdown, was batted down just before the final whistle. The real strength of the Brookline Horsemen will be seen Sunday when Thomas was regained the use of his arm. Stuhldreher will be back to direct the team, and Bagby, who no mean will be back, will be available. I understand unquestionably a something battle will ensue under the shadow of Coogan's Bluff. I said it was some. It was just really tough to read that, because some of it was just cut off. Really, whoever did a job, taking a picture of that article did an absolutely horrible job. All right, we got, and this is the final article here. We got, let's see, bad pass in the second quarter stops the Horsemen's drive just when a touchdown looked promising. A poor pass at critical time spoiled whatever chances the Brookline Horsemen had to beat the Giants in their National Football League game at Ebbets Field yesterday. The break against the Horsemen came in the second quarter when Rex Thomas and Al Leith carrying the ball. The Horsemen had pushed the Giants back to the Giants' 10-yard line. Then, with the crowd calling for a Brooklyn touchdown, a bad pass from center spilled the beans. Al Nasser receiving the ball for the Giants. After that, it was all Giants. All G-men. Yeah. Get this here. Oh, going wrong way on it. There we go. Harry Stuhldreher was missing from the Brooklyn lineup. Stuhldreher coaches the Villanova team, and as Villanova played yesterday, Harry was unable to get away to play with the Horsemen. Because let's not forget, right? I mean, because back in the day, right? You know, he could coach a college team on Saturday and then Sunday play for the pro team. But when both teams playing on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day game, you can only be at one game, right? So, let's see here. The contest was a rough one, and both Haynes and Bomar were carried off the field. Haynes in the second play of the game, and the former Vanderbilt star during the second period. The Horsemen's forward wall, playing together for the second time, gave evidence that it was not yet coordinated. The Giants were probably the strongest line in the National League. I think I already read stuff like this here. Yeah, I did. Looks like I read the same article. Pretty much the same article I think I read. This was with the probably pretty much. Yeah, so that was pretty much the same article. So there was a couple articles on this, and I pretty much touched it. So I mean, it was the Giants wound up, when I said they scored a field goal before halftime. They scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. There was no scoring in the fourth quarter. But I mean, in between the Brooklyn Lions, Brooklyn Lion Horsemen, or whatever, they were missing a couple of their key stars, right? One of them was injured. Another one was coaching in Villanova, right? So, they were a little bit of a disadvantage there. But let's not forget, I said, in the beginning, they got down to the Giants about 10-yard line. They had a bad snap from center, quite possibly cost them some points. And then in the final quarter, right, the final minute or so of the game, whatever, they got down deep in Giants territory, and they were, didn't quite score there. So, I mean, the Giants wound up winning the game 17-0, but it was a little bit closer than quite possibly a little bit closer than the score. And let's not forget, the Giants picked up a fumble. Joe Doc Alexander ran it back for a touchdown. So that, so the game was a little bit closer than it was. But hey, I'm a Giant. So you can tell I'm a Giant fan. They won 17-0. It was Thanksgiving. It was a good game. So that's what happened on this day. The New York Giants 17, the Brooklyn Lions, Brooklyn Horse Lion, Brooklyn Horsemen, whatever you want to call them, nothing. So that's what happened on this day, November 25th, 1926, in New York football Giants history. See you next time.